I remember the exact moment she laughed. Her wine glass tilted just slightly as she looked at my rusty old car parked outside her mansion and whispered, "How quaint." My cheeks burned, not from shame, but from the promise I made to myself right then. She thought I married her son for status. She thought I belonged in secondhand clothes and cracked dashboards. What she didn't know was I'd been building something in the shadows, and today I won't say a word. I'll let the engine of my $300,000 machine speak for me. When I first met Ethan, he felt like the ending to a book I never thought I'd be in. Polished, soft-spoken, with a quiet kind of confidence that didn't need to be loud. He was a rising name in finance, but never once bragged about it. We met at a charity auction, one I attended out of obligation more than interest. He noticed me from across the room, or maybe I let him. Either way, he crossed the floor like he already knew me. Within months, he proposed with a ring that shimmered like it had a past life. I said yes before the second glass of champagne. Our wedding made it onto 3 society blogs and 1 fashion magazine. Not because I was some public figure, but because Evelyn, my new mother-in-law, had connections deep in media. She made sure the photos showed only her good side and that my dress wasn't too busy. That should have been my first red flag. Evelyn Whitmore was the kind of woman whose smile could both charm and crush, often at the same time. CEO of a luxury cosmetics empire, she moved through the world like a queen, annoyed she had to explain herself to peasants. The house Ethan and I moved into was more a monument than a home. 5 bedrooms, 3 fireplaces, and a wine cellar I'd never asked for. Everything gleamed. Ethan insisted it was ours, but Evelyn owned the deed. "It's just easier this way," he'd said, with that same boyish grin I used to find endearing. I nodded, pretending that didn't sound like a leash. Our early days were flooded with candlelit dinners and Instagram-worthy vacations, at least for the world. Behind closed doors, I was given tasks like helping Evelyn plan corporate events, which really meant standing still in designer gowns and smiling beside products I'd never use. Evelyn called it training you for visibility. I called it being decorative. Still, I stayed quiet. I thought silence would earn me space. It didn't. At brunches with Evelyn's circle, women who wore wealth like war medals, I was often spoken at not to. They loved to ask where I got my shoes, with that tone suggesting I probably borrowed them. Evelyn would chuckle and pivot the conversation before I could answer. I learned to smile through every verbal pat on the head. "She's sweet," I heard one of them whisper. "You can tell she's not from here." But what cracked the surface wasn't a comment at brunch. It was a phone call. Late one night, I passed Evelyn's study while returning a borrowed necklace. Her door was cracked open and her voice floated through with perfect clarity. "Yes, the black dress," she said into the phone. No, she looked like she borrowed it from someone wealthier. And that car, God, that car, it's like watching a maid park outside a gala. The laughter on the other end didn't sting as much as her own did. It wasn't the words, it was the ease. As if mocking me wasn't personal, it was recreational. I stood in the hallway, necklace tight in my hand, long after she'd hung up. The next morning, I returned the necklace to its box and left it in her study without a note. She'd know. That night, I stopped playing dress-up. I began observing instead. Ethan started working later. When he did come home, he kissed my forehead like I was a child with a fever. Distant, mechanical. One afternoon, I walked into his home office to bring him tea and saw a document open on his screen. Revised Family Trust Allocation. My name wasn't on it. I asked nothing. He noticed the tea, not my eyes. "Thanks, babe," he mumbled. But I was already looking past him, at the fine print, the signatures, the legal language crafted to erase me. He didn't even know I'd seen it, but I had, and it changed everything. The fundraiser was supposed to be about clean water in Africa. At least that's what the brochures said. In reality, it was a parade of gowns and ego, a room full of people too wealthy to understand the weight of the cause they were supporting. I'd gotten used to these events by now, memorizing faces, learning which fork to use when, how to nod politely while being subtly interrogated about my wardrobe. But Evelyn had something else in mind that night. She floated across the ballroom like smoke, smiling, greeting, performing, and then, with perfect timing, she took the microphone. "Before we raise our glasses," she announced, "let's acknowledge someone special tonight. My lovely daughter-in-law, Jane." Heads turned, cameras too. I smiled automatically. She gestured for me to stand beside her. "Jane has really blossomed since joining our family," she continued, voice syrupy sweet, "and it's just incredible how far she's come. Did you all know she once worked as a waitress? That's not a metaphor. Actual trays, real tips. We all start somewhere, right?" Laughter, light, patronizing. I didn't flinch. I didn't smile either. I kept my face neutral, my spine straight. And when Evelyn turned slightly toward the audience, away from me, a nearby camera caught my reflection in the mirror behind her. Blank, cold, calculating. I sat back down, gracious as ever. Inside, I was taking notes. It wasn't the humiliation that hurt. I'd swallowed worse in silence. It was the precision of the attack. Evelyn didn't want to destroy me. She wanted to frame me, as decoration, as charity, as proof of her own magnanimity. What she didn't know was that she had just flipped the wrong switch. 3 years ago, long before Ethan, long before my name became an accessory to someone else's empire, I built a tech startup out of my garage with a friend from MIT. We designed a predictive analytics platform that later got acquired by a fintech unicorn. My name was wiped from the press release at my request. I'd cashed out early, quietly, for reasons only 2 people knew. One of them's now dead. The other was standing across the ballroom, smug in sequins. Later that night, as Evelyn basked in compliments and Ethan pretended nothing happened, I walked to my car alone. Not the valet line, not the spotlight, just the cold, quiet lot where my old sedan waited. I drove home with my shoes off, thinking about code. That night, I stayed up till dawn. In a corner of our mansion, Evelyn never entered. I set up a new server. I used an alias, Helena Frost. I built a firewall so dense, not even government AI could breach it without a year's effort. Within 2 weeks, I launched the shell of a new company, Vera Syndicate, a digital solutions firm. But beneath the front, it was something else entirely. I poured my nights into development, machine learning tools for e-commerce, blockchain tools for verifying affiliate traffic, scalable architecture for dropshipping infrastructures. Everything automated, nothing traceable. I knew the games Evelyn played, but I was building a game board she didn't even know existed. During the day, I smiled, wore pastel, and planned Evelyn's luncheons. By night, I became my own ghost, designing funnels that tripled conversion rates, recruiting silent investors through encrypted exchanges. I never once used my real name. Helena Frost had a voice, a tone, a portfolio. She became real. 6 months later, Vera Syndicate was quietly handling back-end logistics for over 30 influencers and luxury brands. It became the go-to solution for passive digital monetization. No billboards, no articles, just word of encrypted mouth. My monthly revenue passed $300,000 before Evelyn even noticed I stopped asking for allowance. Then came the IPO news. Evelyn's cosmetic company Lunaris was preparing to go public. Her press machine spun out headlines of legacy, female empowerment, generational wealth. I read them all, bookmarking key investors, timing, leadership structures. What Evelyn didn't know, couldn't know, was that a small, anonymous tech firm had been quietly acquiring preferred shares in Lunaris for over 3 months, just under the radar, just legal enough, just hidden enough. That firm, Vera Syndicate, Helena Frost owned 8.7% of Lunaris as of last week, enough to get a board seat, enough to see every financial detail, enough to watch the Queen scream when the mask slipped. I sat on my patio, barefoot, laptop open. Ethan was in Milan pretending to broker a partnership for his hedge fund. Evelyn was on TV again, talking about humility and leadership. And I was sipping coffee reading the draft of an exposé a freelance journalist was about to publish. The private machine behind Lunaris's IPO. Who is Helena Frost? The final line made me smile. No one knows who she is, but if Evelyn Whitmore isn't careful, she might just become her biggest shareholder. I wasn't surprised when the first rumor reached me. I was just surprised by how unsurprised I felt. It came through a back channel, an anonymous email routed through 3 VPNs. But the message was clear. Evelyn had been using the Whitmore Women's Fund, her prized philanthropic baby, as a covert tax shelter. The timing was immaculate. Weeks before the Lunaris IPO, they'd rerouted millions in donations through fake shell charities in Eastern Europe, then funneled the returns back as private equity gifts. I double-checked the routing numbers. The sender had attached proof, internal documents, memos, Evelyn's digital signature. The scale wasn't just unethical, it was criminal. And Ethan? He knew. I stared at our wedding photo on the fireplace. Ethan holding me, mid-laugh, sun kissing our faces like some false blessing. What a well-shot lie. The next day, he came home early. I was in the kitchen, pouring tea I had no intention of drinking. He didn't bother sitting. And we need to talk, he said, sliding a folder across the marble counter. The lawyers think it's best we start consolidating things, for efficiency, ahead of the IPO. I didn't touch it. What kind of things? Assets, properties, stocks? It's a joint agreement just to make things smoother. I flipped it open. Clause after clause, hidden beneath the legal jargon, was a weapon. If I signed, I'd forfeit my financial claim on every shared investment since our marriage, including Vera Syndicate's holdings in Lunaris. This is a prenup in reverse, I said flatly. It's just paperwork, he lied. No, Ethan, it's a transfer of power. To you. He shifted uncomfortably. Come on, Jane, don't be dramatic. You don't even use that old car anymore. We're upgrading everything. You should be happy. That last word, happy. As if that's what this was about. I closed the folder and slid it back to him. No. His eyes narrowed. Don't make this difficult. And then, like it was rehearsed, his hand moved. Quick, not a full strike, more like a slap meant to shock rather than bruise. But it landed. Silence bloomed around us like a slow explosion. He stared at me, horrified at himself. I reached up, touched my cheek. It didn't hurt as much as it should have. I think part of me expected it, expected something to confirm that whatever we had was already dead. If you ever thought love would protect you from being hit, I said, voice low. You were me yesterday. He stammered, apologized, blamed stress, IPO tension, said he wasn't himself. I walked away mid-sentence. That night, I packed one suitcase. I didn't write a note. I didn't cry. I didn't even lock the door behind me. I drove to a rented office space I'd been using under a false name, one of the many layers I'd prepared. I spent the next 4 hours transferring funds, $10 million clean and untraceable, into a nonprofit I'd been quietly building, Nova Foundation. Its mission: to investigate corporate abuse within women-led companies. The irony made it sting sweeter. At sunrise, I sent a single text. No name, no greeting. Just one sentence. I hope you can hold on to your company after today. I knew she'd read it immediately. Evelyn always kept her phone on vibrate, even at night, just in case someone more important than her conscience needed her attention. 2 hours later, the exposé went live. The journalist had done a masterful job, laid out every false grant, every offshore transfer, every document Evelyn thought she'd buried. The piece didn't name Vera Syndicate. It didn't have to. The connections were there for anyone willing to look. The internet did the rest. By noon, Lunaris scandal was trending. By 2 p.m., Evelyn's face was on every major news network. By 4 p.m., the stock market halted trading on Lunaris shares due to unusual volatility. And me, I was already gone. I checked into a boutique hotel under my old college alias. No entourage, no press, Just me, a burner laptop, and silence. I didn't smile, I didn't celebrate, I just watched. I didn't need to speak. The world was already shouting for me. The story broke harder than I expected. Within 72 hours, Evelyn's legacy crumbled in the public square. Anonymous insiders, emboldened by the exposure, began submitting whistleblower reports to financial watchdogs. The media called it the Whitmore Web. I didn't correct them. Let the world make its metaphors. But one event doesn't start a revolution, so I gave them more. Monday became the first day of Whistleblow Week. Each morning, a new file landed on anonymous journalism forums. Internal memos, misappropriated fund trails, off-the-books payouts, abusive NDAs, all tied to Lunaris, all traceable, all real. I never signed a single post, but everyone knew who was behind them. Helena Frost had no voice, but her silence screamed. On Thursday, I made my first public move. It was 10:42 a.m. when I arrived at the Lunaris headquarters. The parking lot buzzed with reporters, employees, protesters. I drove slowly, deliberately. The engine purred like a lion bored of cages. The car, a slate-gray McLaren 750S, glinted under the morning sun, every panel flawless, every sound engineered. I stepped out in a charcoal pantsuit, minimal makeup, hair pulled back like a blade. I didn't wave. I didn't nod. I walked through the front doors as if I had been doing so every day of my life. No one stopped me. The car wasn't for show. It was a signal. For Evelyn, it said, "You mocked the rust. Now look at the steel." For Ethan, it said, "You thought you could erase me, but I've been writing the script." For me, it said, "You're not hiding anymore." The receptionist, frozen mid-phone call, stood as I passed. Her mouth opened slightly, but I was already inside the elevator. By noon, the emergency board meeting was underway. Evelyn had been silent since the scandal erupted, but the board wasn't waiting. They needed someone clean, capable, in control. Someone who understood both tech and branding. Someone who, until recently, had been standing behind a much louder curtain. They offered me the interim CEO role. I didn't say yes immediately. I asked for 3 conditions: full operational autonomy, transparency audits led by third-party investigators, and immediate buyout of all silent stakeholders with conflict of interest histories. They blinked, then nodded. I signed the contract with a pen I brought from home, a ballpoint, $5, no logo. My first act as CEO was to dissolve the PR team Evelyn had built. I replaced them with a coalition of journalists, activists, and digital ethicists. We launched a new campaign, Beyond the Mirror. The slogan was simple, the meaning deliberate. Lunaris would no longer sell fantasies. We'd invest in science-backed, environmentally safe, culturally inclusive products. No more skin-whitening creams. No more age-defying nonsense. No more shaming women into needing redemption in a bottle. The company flinched. Investors panicked. But the market didn't collapse. Instead, new money flowed in. Slow, thoughtful, aligned. Foundations, grassroots funds, ethical venture capital. I didn't burn the empire. I rewired it. Evelyn? She vanished from public life. The last time anyone saw her, she was boarding a private jet to Switzerland. She hadn't called me. I didn't expect her to. Her silence was the only honest thing she ever gave me. Ethan, however, did call. He left a voicemail at midnight, his voice unsure, softer than I remembered. "Jane, I don't even know what to say. I messed up. I let her manipulate me. I know it's too late, but I hope you're okay. I miss you." I listened once, deleted it. The next afternoon, he called again. This time, while I was in the middle of a board meeting, reviewing new environmental packaging prototypes. My phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Ethan. I declined the call. Looked up. "Sorry for the interruption," I said calmly. "Let's continue." That night, I stood alone in the new Lunaris office, redesigned to remove glass walls, remove hierarchy. My office didn't sit above the floor. It sat within it. I watched the city from the window. My reflection was faint, half merged with the lights outside. For the first time, I saw myself not as someone who had escaped, but someone who had built her way out, one piece at a time. Success is louder than truth, and sometimes silence becomes a weapon even you can't control. The first headline hit like a glancing blow. The Ice Queen of Lunaris, Jane Whitmore's cold takeover. I shrugged it off. Then came the op-eds. Bloggers, anonymous sources. She used insider data to dismantle a family. Was this a long game of calculated revenge? I watched them pile up like dust on a window, insignificant until you can't see the light through it anymore. What hurt wasn't the noise, it was the betrayal. Lena, my assistant, my shadow, the only person who knew the whole blueprint. She'd been with me since the early days of Vera's syndicate, long before the boardrooms and cameras. She once slept on my floor during launch week. She once brought me cough syrup at 3 a.m. without asking. She once said, "You've already made history. Now make meaning." She was arrested on a Tuesday morning, leaked financial records, unauthorized access to whistleblower databases. An anonymous tip connected her to the internal data that started Whistleblow Week. The same data I had sourced legally, clean, but the evidence pointed otherwise. They said she hacked a sealed server, that she stole Evelyn's medical records to plant stories. I knew she didn't, but the world didn't care. I tried to call her. They said she was under investigation, no visitors. And just like that, the headlines flipped again. Jane Whitmore's silent general falls. Was it all just vengeance? When whistleblowing becomes a witch hunt. The board panicked, investors trembled. I held the line for 3 days straight, but the toll was heavier than I'd admitted. On the fourth night, I sat in the new Lunaris studio surrounded by mock-ups of rebranded products. Clean ingredients, minimalist packaging, no false promises. I stared at them like they belonged to someone else. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. But inside, something cracked open. Had I gone too far? I hadn't spoken to Ethan. I hadn't answered Evelyn's lawyer. I hadn't returned my mother's texts in days. I was alone. No, not alone. Isolated. Voluntarily. That's when Evelyn re-emerged. She chose the perfect hour. Evening prime time. A live interview on a glossy network with soft lighting and even softer questions. She wore navy, understated. Her hair loose, eyes glistening. She cried. "I wasn't perfect," she said, voice trembling, "but I built something from nothing. And I loved my family. I loved Jane. I treated her like a daughter. And I don't know when it changed. I don't know why she hated us." The interviewer leaned in. "Are you saying she orchestrated this?" Evelyn hesitated just long enough for the moment to feel real. "I'm saying the timing wasn't an accident. The leaks, the betrayal, the collapse. Someone wanted to erase me, and maybe I let them in." It was a masterclass in public manipulation. She didn't accuse me. She made the audience do it for her. The next morning, new legislation passed limiting foreign shell companies from holding large domestic shares without transparent oversight. Vera Syndicate was flagged. My 8.7% in Lunaris was frozen, audited, eventually, under pressure, removed. I lost my seat. I lost my leverage. I lost the symbol of everything I'd rebuilt. The board offered me an option: file a formal appeal and fight it publicly. I declined. No press release, no statement. I walked into my office, packed a single box, left the rest untouched. The team watched me quietly, respectfully. No one dared to ask why. Outside, the city buzzed with new headlines. This time, they didn't sting. They felt distant, like a language I no longer needed to understand. I took a taxi. Not the McLaren, not the driver. Just me and a stranger, sharing silence in traffic. We passed a billboard of Evelyn's face from a year ago, smiling, radiant, perfect. It was half torn now, rain-streaked. Forgotten. I looked away. Sometimes the only way to win is to stop playing. The first page was the hardest. Not because I didn't know what to write, but because I knew exactly what not to. I didn't want revenge porn. I didn't want memoir glamour. I didn't want a clean narrative that turned betrayal into bullet points. I wanted truth, and truth was messy, uncomfortable, earned. I called the manuscript Leadership Without War. It began not with my fall nor my rise, but with the moment I realized I'd stopped recognizing my own voice. The book wasn't about Evelyn, or Ethan, or even Lunaris. It was about power and how quickly it turns people into mirrors of the very systems they swore to dismantle. I wrote it by hand, page after page, in a small cabin in Vermont. No Wi-Fi, no headlines, no excuses. When I finished, I didn't send it to publishers. I uploaded it as an open source document. Free to read, free to share. No ads, no monetization. Within a month, it was translated into 17 languages. By the third month, it had been downloaded over 2 million times. Global forums hosted discussions around its core idea that true leadership doesn't dominate, it elevates. It doesn't protect the powerful, it protects the powerless. Women from tech startups, NGOs, education networks, and microfinance coalitions began reaching out. They didn't ask me to lead. They asked how I built without burning. That's when I realized I wasn't done. I founded the Nova Ecosystem, a decentralized global network of women-led businesses. No central HQ, no shareholders, just modular companies bound by shared ethics, resources, and mutual accountability. No member company could exceed a certain size without splitting into independent sister organizations. Growth was distributed, leadership rotated, profits recycled. I turned down every major VC that came knocking. They all said the same thing: you need scale. And I answered the same way every time. Scale broke the system. I'm here to fix it. Lena was released with no charges. The case against her collapsed. She found me before I could reach out. We sat in a public park sharing orange slices like nothing had happened. Next time, she said, make the password less poetic. I laughed for the first time in months. As for Evelyn, she didn't disappear again. This time, she stood trial. The charges stuck: fraud, tax evasion, misappropriation of charitable funds. Her lawyers spun stories about memory lapses, stress disorders, scapegoats. The court didn't care. When the sentencing date came, I stayed home. People asked why. Reporters camped outside, ready for a photo. Some said it was weakness. Others said I was afraid to face her. The truth? I didn't go because she no longer mattered. Ethan reached out once after that, an email, short and formal. He wished me well. He said he was moving to Singapore. I deleted it without reading the second paragraph. The McLaren sat untouched in storage. One spring morning, I returned to the cafe, the same one where Evelyn once sipped espresso and called my car charming in a poor sort of way. It looked smaller now, or maybe I was taller. The counter hadn't changed. The bell above the door still chimed too loud. I ordered an espresso and sat at the same table by the window, the same angle, the same light. I placed a folded piece of paper on the tabletop before I left. No name, no fanfare. That car was the beginning. I just needed a reason. Outside, the city breathed slower. Or maybe I did. As I walked down the block, a girl, no more than 20, maybe a college student, stopped me. Sorry, she said, nervously adjusting her phone in hand. Are you Jane Whitmore? I hesitated. I read your book, she added quickly, 3 times. You don't know what it did for me. I started my own platform. Nothing huge. But we help women in rural towns create online marketplaces without needing middlemen. It's called Ember Loop. She paused. Could I get a photo with you? I smiled. Not because of the camera, but because of the name. Of course. She snapped the picture. I didn't check it. I didn't ask her to tag me. Before she left, she turned back and said, "You're kind of the reason I think we don't need to play their game anymore." I nodded, and for the first time in a long while, felt the kind of pride that wasn't loud, the kind that didn't need headlines, the kind that didn't hurt. As she disappeared into the crowd, I stood for a moment longer, watching the world go by. I wasn't a CEO, I wasn't a victim, I wasn't a name on paper. I was something else now, something new.